And Pakistan has thrashed Australia again and won the series 2-1. Words I never thought I would be uttering on the show. Welcome to Shiny Side. I'm your host, Faris, and we have with us once again Omer from Houston, and we have Khurram Jamali joining us for the second time from Karachi, I believe. How are you doing, Khurram?
Doing well, Faris. Hi, Omer. Good to see you both.
So I was just
Hey,
saying, the
guys.
last time we had Omer on the sorry, Khurram on the show was right after Pakistan has lost to the US. And he has to be perhaps the bravest man to have been on the show so far to come on that moment. But Khurram, had I told you X months ago that we would be talking wrapping up a series win over Australia, you would have probably laughed at me or maybe punched me. What do you make of it all?
I mean, absolutely. In fact, if you told me this 30 days ago or 45 days ago, I would have said the same thing to you. So, I mean, look, it's been quite a turnaround, right? This last, I guess, month or so,
Yeah.
starting with the second test against England. And, we criticize the board and the selection committee and everyone a lot when they get things wrong. Seems like they've got something right here, folks.
Yeah. Uh, Omar, so another way of looking at it is had someone gone in a coma 2 years ago and they woke up and saw this, they would have said, yeah, it's natural progression. We're doing pretty well as a team. So this was the next step, right? But it's really hard to analyze Pakistan cricket, right? Because we seem to be a lot of pieces in place moving in the right direction till about perhaps 2 years ago. And then things really fell apart, or at least appeared to fell apart 15 months ago. How do you make sense of this, Omar?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely, I'm still not. This is the second session we've done in a row where you said Pakistan has thrashed Australia. I can get used to that statement, right?
Hmm.
Yeah, it's been very interesting. I think the main thing is, a lot of people, we were all critical of everything going on in Pakistan cricket, but I think people were extremely harsh on the players. What we've seen is the same. I mean, the vast majority of the bunch is the same players, group of players, but with the right type of management above them, with no off-field distractions, they are a talented bunch who've really brought one of the biggest victories in recent history. So I think it's just a good reminder of how important the stability and all that is, right? But yeah, I mean, just very happy to see them win. Very happy to see, just the growth, and hopefully this is we've turned the page.
And these are the same guys who were doing pretty well till 2 years ago, who've had a torrid 2 years, and now they're perhaps you can say it's just been a month, right? But across formats, we've seen they're doing some things right. Khurram, Australia didn't have a lot of the key players in the last game. Having said that, they had their first choice bowling attack in the first three games, which is very rare because Australia rarely plays all their quicks in an ODI bilateral series. Do you think do you think that kind of takes the shine off the achievement, or it's a big achievement in either way?
Not at all. Especially because I mean, if you look at it in the first two ODIs, really the only player they're missing, and it's not a small player, but was Travis Head, right? But that's on the batting side. Really, they had their first string bowling attack. They brought in Hazelwood for the second ODI. Didn't really make a difference. In fact, probably our best ODI batting performance in as long as I can remember, especially in a chase. In a small chase, actually, those are the ones that we always have problems with. So I really don't think it does. And I mean, if you put it in the context for recent Omer, do you guys know the last time Australia lost an ODI series at home?
I do not actually. So if you know that, please share.
2019, 2-1 to India. So they haven't lost an ODI series at home in 5 years. And in fact, only two teams have actually beaten Australia in two ODI series at home, South Africa and now Pakistan. And in their entire sort of history,
Yeah.
they've actually lost, I think, now eight ODI series ever. So, I mean, this is a pretty monumental achievement. Choti baat nahi hai, and we should, I'm very, very
Yeah.
proud of it. I do want to say one thing that I think, Faris, you were talking about how the team was doing well, sort of jumping the gun here. But I took like this screenshot of this one moment in the third ODI, right? Where Rizwan, I forget, I think it was Naseem Shah bowling, and Rizwan had three slips and a tight gully. And
Yeah.
I was like, I don't remember the last time
Yeah. And
Pakistan had this fielding set up in an
not even
ODI.
in the first over, maybe in the eighth or ninth over, I think from what I remember. Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. And so I was like, so there has been a mentality change that I would put to the leadership, whether on the field, the coach. I think Gillespie has a lot to do with our bowlers performing as well as they did in Australia. We have to give credit there as well. And then the selection committee and the changes that they've made to the
Yeah,
structure, which I'm sure we'll talk more about.
yeah. Interesting. So I
If I
guess
could just add to it, Faris, I think, look, it's Australia. We've seen people like Andrew Simons with no history of performance in that 2003 World Cup and scored that amazing century and became a star. We've seen
Yes.
so many examples of people who weren't well known and came and just performed against Pakistan and won. So Australia has bench strength. So I don't think there's any. Yes, I think realistically, third ODI they were maybe a little bit of inferior team, but overall, I mean, they're a bowling attack, and Australia is the world champion. So I think
Yeah,
nothing.
I think I
Relatively,
completely agree. Also, if you look at other major wins in Australia, right? So everyone talks about India winning the Test series there a few years ago, but there was no Warner and Smith the first time around that happened. There was a series in 2004, I'm going way back now, where you didn't have Warne and McGrath, and India drew that series. That was a big achievement at that time. Obviously, in history, it goes down as India drew the series. No one really cares, right? It is Australia at the end of the day. But
Yeah.
I guess getting into the game itself a little bit, the third, so Pakistan again won the toss, which was probably good for us. We so again after the first game and second game, I was thinking we need to get the balance a bit different, perhaps get a spinner in. But I guess if your bowling team's out under 40 overs, that doesn't really matter who your fifth bowler is. So I guess humble pie eaten there. Uh, uh, Australia made a number of changes. I guess I'm not going to list all of them, but they had six players going out. If you look at how the game started, so Nasheem got Jake Fraser McGurk pretty early. Uh, and Hardy, just like when Hardy looked like he was about to get going, Shaheen got him. And then there were two slips, like Khurram pointed out. Uh, I guess the general thing is this time around, right? There were a few key moments, so maybe they were standing out more in the first game or two, but this time around, there aren't too many key moments with the ball, because we were just relentless. We were just on the ball throughout. What do you make of that?
So if I could share go first on this, Faris, like you talked about the fact that they didn't pick a spinner. You look back to the blueprint of every game that we have played under Babar Azam, and it's exactly the same, right? There's certain overs that the two fast bowlers will
yeah.
bowl. Then after sort of fielding restrictions are out, you're going to have a spinner come on. Almost always in the last few years, we've let the ball drop when the spinner comes on because we've just not had great performance from our spinners. And by then we're already behind the eight ball, chasing the game and trying to recover as a partnership is building, right? Nearly every game is the same script. So I think what Rizwan did here, where he was just like, I'm not going to take my foot off the throat,
Yeah.
right? I don't care what's left, whether I have to, last 10 overs, pata nahi kaun karayega, but I'm going to play my best players, put them in positions to actually win me the game, and credit to all the bowlers. Each one of them consistently actually delivered. So, I mean, I would say similar strategy in the test matches too. I mean, when do you ever hear of just two bowlers bowling? But he said this is what's working. Let's go.
And
So Shan said that, of course. But I think this historically is what has worked for Pakistan, right? You go back to the time of Wasim and Waqar, it was about just choke them out. Don't This game shouldn't even go to the 100 overs, right?
and Umar, I
Yeah.
guess we were probably helped that the fact that in the first game we were defending a very low score, right? So different context. So we were never going to go till the 40th over. But doing that in the second and third game probably was again, like Khurram said, required a bit different mindset entirely.
I think that's the key point. I mean, there's so many examples. You take the New Zealand team, really of present day, but of the past, where no, not many stars, but great captaincy, good planning. They come in, they execute really well and win a lot of games. And Pakistan sort of good captaincies. That's where I'm going with this, right? Like just smart captaincy, knowing your strengths, knowing your opponent's weaknesses goes a long way. And I think that confidence, again, you can see that on the field with how comfortable Rizwan is on the field. He doesn't get flustered when a few boundaries are hit. He does back his players. He does back his bowlers. Naseem wasn't going. He wasn't, again, similar to the second game. He wasn't bowling six perfect balls. Yet he stuck with him, brought him back, and he delivered. So I think that plays a huge deal in a sport like cricket, right, where you really need to understand the full picture. And I think, as Khurram rightly pointed out, we were very accustomed to that template mentality in the last couple of years, and I think it's a very, very pleasant change. By the way, I forgot to say, when we started this, I wanted to start off as Wasim Bakar, Fakhr, and others did when we qualified for the final of the of the previous World Cup, if you recall, with that whole bhangra on TV, given the context of the win. That's how we should have kicked off.
Yes.
Seriously.
Let's see. Maybe if you win the T20s, we should do that. But yeah, I guess on the bowling again, I mean, Haris was again, he was being himself, expressing himself. Uh, and it was also I thought Hasnain was a bit of a like he didn't get too many rewards, but he got a key wicket. He also retired hurt. This poor Connolly guy, I think he fractured his thumb. So I hope he recovers soon. But yeah, also there's a bit of back history there, right? So Hasnain was called for his action in the 100. And the guy who kind of stretched him about the action and told the umpire to check it was actually Stoinis. And Hussein and Hasnain got Stoinis out this time around, right? So it felt like he wanted to say something. I don't know if he really did, but Hassan's probably too nice. Did you pick up on that, Khurram? I can tell by your expression.
I did. It looked like he was going to, and then sort of backed off, right? And certainly there's a little bit of history there. Hassan, someone I'm super proud of for the work that he's put in. People saw him in the tournament that we just organized, that the PCB just organized, where he did really, really well. I don't know how many have actually seen the work he's put in the UK with specialist trainers on his bowling action, figuring out this chucking controversy, and then figuring out how he sort of tweaks his mechanics to improve. And you can see that. You can see that little bit of extra nip. And actually, I think out of the four, he's the only one who now has that. Haris has it to a certain extent. Wo jaan marta hai. The other two need to get that back. I mean, they bowled really, really well, but they certainly don't have, in my view, that extra nip that they had maybe a couple of years ago. And hopefully they're going to put in that work. And that Wasim Bhai kept calling this like a world-class attack. I thought it was a little bit of a stretch. I think it can be world-class, can be the best in the world. It's not quite there yet. A little bit of work needs to be put in by these boys, and then we're there.
Like I said, had Wasim Bhai gone into that coma I spoke about 2 years ago, he could have said that, right? Because he missed out an entire chunk of ICC tournaments and whatnot in the middle. But
so if I just want to point to this, right? So I think the biggest difference in the game, obviously we talked about captaincy, was the performance of Haris and Hasnain, right? I think if we go back over the last couple of years, Shaheen and Naseem have been okay. They've been decent, right? They've put in some very good performances as well. But we always lost it in the first change. I mean, just as far as the last World Cup, right? We lost him, Haris Rauf coming in over number 7, 8, 10 or whatever and giving it away. So I think that was the biggest differences. We never took our foot off the
But Omar, you said it there, right? You said over 7, 8, 10. The problem was every single episode we said don't bowl Haris in the freaking power play. And every game he would bowl 3 overs, get smacked, and you would actually see, even in the game that we went for like 300 plus, Haris would come back really well. So it's something that's very obvious statistically. You don't need a very deep analytics to figure out that he gets smashed in the power play, right? But clearly, Rizwan has learned from that, and we didn't see him at all in the power play this time around.
Yeah, it's very true.
So yeah, I guess Rizwan's captaincy, big difference. I mean, looking at Australia, I mean, this was meant to be Inglis's captaincy debut. He's just being called into the test squad for Australia. I guess when your team gets bowled out batting first for under 150, there isn't a lot you can do, Omer, to kind of really get anything out of that game.
Yeah, I mean, he just has to point to game number 1 and 2 and say, look, Cummins was captain, he had better team, and he did the same, right? So, but yeah, I mean, it's just one data point, and against a team that was in form, hit a red hot form. Yeah, I mean, hard to judge him on such a small. I mean, I think the criticism is that the Australian team played it like a T20. I mean, nobody was there for putting in the long, hard grind that was really needed when you were against some good fast bowlers on a pitch that was offering a little bit, right? Yeah. So I think nobody played it like an ODI, and I think that's sort of a worry for global cricket in general. But I think that's the template that just fit Pakistan so well.
Yeah. And I guess, so speaking about how the ball was doing a bit, it seemed like, by the way, so in the first game, and tell me if you guys disagree, but Khurram, you go first, perhaps. Saim and Abdullah in the first game, they took about 6 overs to get set, and they really got going, and they looked very fluent. In the third game, I thought they never fully looked set. They were just playing and missing. There was a lot of good stuff happening.
Yeah, particularly in the second game, I thought, I thought they really took some time. They played and missed, but they stuck it out.
Yeah.
I don't think they went as aggressively as the Aussie batsmen.
Yeah.
And I think that made a difference, right? And then Saim really exploded in the second game. And then third one also, I think, it's great to see Babar perform, but like really it was a no pressure performance, right? Like everything was set, the platform was there to get going. So I have to give credit to those two. I mean, there's so much conversation about the fact that they've had pretty much zero chemistry in their partnerships. They barely done anything across tests, no ODI. So it's really, really good to see that they gutted it out. And I think they've turned a corner. And I do think they're a pair that complement each other quite well. I like Abdullah's orthodoxy, and then Sam brings a little bit of flair. And together, I think again, I think the team might be onto something. As long and I think we should give them some time now,
Yeah.
right? As long as they're fit and they've got they're passing their fitness stats, which have certainly become more important in Pakistan. I think we should give them a run.
Omer, your take on the openers?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to criticize them, against a that was a world-class bowling attack, right? First two games, and to be able to get some big scores regardless of your method is already a success. And obviously they went about it in a very smart way, which as Khurram explained it. But yeah, I think 10 out of 10 to them. I don't think we would have we could have expected anything more. And again, new pair. We talked about it earlier. Syme, only this was his, three ODI. He debuted in this series. So fairly fresh, and hopefully, yeah, there's a future here.
So I think moving on from the hardcore cricket, there were a couple of funny slash vibe moments in the game. One was when Shaheen was bowling, a throw came in and his thumb seemed to get hit really badly and he was struggling. And then you had Dr. Babar run on and suddenly do like pull his thumb in five different directions. And there was a 30-second drinks break and he was good to go again. So I mean, it looked a bit funny that they didn't wait for the physio to do it, but I think from there's been a lot of talk about politics and players not getting along, etc., etc. So I think it was a good to see moment where perhaps the guys have disagreements, but they are there in the field fighting it out together. And another
Yeah,
similar moment was
people will say, Faris, people will say if he really cared about him, he would have never touched his thumb and waited for the physio. So, again, you can go anywhere.
true. And there was another key, I thought interesting moment is when again Rizwan was captain. I think Babar hit the winning runs, but the joy on their face when they were celebrating, right? You could tell that it means a lot to both of them, right? Because again, captaincy or not, they've both been through a really tough 15 months or so, right? And I think you could see the joy on their face. And I mean, the Pakistan team took a lap of honor, which is unusual in an ODI
Yeah.
series. But you know what? The crowd was there. The crowd was loving it. So were they. So I have no issues with that. Khurram, what is your take on the whole?
No, no, I'm happy that they enjoyed themselves and they celebrated. Like I said, beating Australia in an ODI series or any series in Australia is a pretty rare event.
Yeah.
First team to do it in 5 years. It's a pretty important achievement. And after all the negativity, pre-World Cup, the change in ODI captains, Babar becoming and then resigning before even managing an ODI. I'm really, really happy for them, right? I do think there are a couple of, we were talking earlier, Faris, about like let's call out the positives as well. I think the fact that the playing 11 is not being picked by the captain, I think that's an interest. I never hear others doing this, but it works in a weird way, right? Because there's no favoritism then from the captain.
Yeah.
You're assessing the conditions, taking their feedback, and then you're putting your best team forward, right? Whatever that may be. Apparently, from what I hear, even the batting order is something that the captain doesn't get to decide. By the way, it's something that being dictated. But that's because of what happened in the T20s, and I'm sure we'll talk about the T20s and the fact that we've had Rizwan and Babar opening, which is a completely different sort of strategy from everyone else. So I'm really happy for the boys. I do think they are feeling a freedom to like perform, and I hope that continues.
Yeah, and I think there's one more thing on that. I think that my sense is that on this tour, unlike the Test series, they just played all the selectors are not in the same stadium. There's only one guy who's traveled, is Abdullah Shafiq, who just seems like a decent guy. So maybe that pressure is kind of a bit off the players. There's not like 10 selectors and 15 board members sitting in the stadium watching them. I think it's much more. It perhaps is much more relaxed atmosphere for them. So hopefully that works for them as well. So I guess, Omer, now coming up, we have three T20s coming up. We have somewhat of a different squad, even though there are lots of overlaps there. Australia, again, they never do. They're not playing any of the frontline quicks, but I guess they have a pretty, like a big best of the big bash kind of squad coming up. How do you see that series, Omer? And how do you think Pakistan's looking at it now?
So T20s in general, usually the even the best and the worst teams are playing, the gaps isn't that large given how the format is played. So I think it'll be well thought out. Excited to see both teams because both teams will be bringing a lot of fresh faces, especially on the Pakistan side. It'll be a very new team, especially in the batting lineup perspective. So yeah, I think it'll be interesting and hopefully it's well thought out. But yeah, a lot of new names coming into the Pakistan team that I'm looking forward to watching and show.
Yeah, Khurram, I think the one issue I have with the team in terms of balance is right. So I was trying to see what the 11 could look like. And we have no fucker. So somehow when we selected Saim for this tour, we only selected him for the ODIs, not the T20s. And of course, now until a week ago, I would have said the best format for him to probably is T20, right? So I haven't heard anything of him being added to that squad yet. But not having Saim and Fakhr, again, he's out for other reasons. But not having Fakhr and Saim means we have a lot of perhaps Babar Azam and Rizwan 2.0s lining up the top 4 and 5. So how do you look at that squad mix for them?
Faris, honestly, I didn't realize that Sam wasn't on the T20 squad. That's really, really interesting. I mean, that's like you said, the first squad I would pick him for. But I suppose he's also had a bit of a bad run in T20Is. Look, I wonder if the plan is still to open with the Rizwan and Babar, which is why something like this is potentially happened. I think I'm looking forward to giving Usman an extended run, Usman Khan. I think he's had a bit of a bad time, but I think in ODIs, in domestic, he's shown his ability to play at a strike rate that's quite different from others. I'm excited about him. Irfan, I'm excited about. I think Saibzada Farhan can play the kind of role that Saim played. So I think we have options, even if we're not doing the Rizwan Babar opening pair. So I'm excited, man. I think we have a good crop of young players. My only hope, Faris, is that we actually give them a shot. I can't, the amount of series that we've taken players to in the past and then not played them. There's a leg spinner we talk a lot about, Brad, who that happened to for years. भाई अगर ले जा रहे हो तो try तो करो ना, मतलब do some rotation. So again, that's what I think.
Abrar has more visas than ODI caps, I think, in spite of traveling all over. But
Seriously.
Omer,
and then I'm also like, on the all-rounder side, I think Jahadad I think is interesting.
Yeah.
Arafat Minhas has been interesting, and then I'd love to see Sufyan Mukim as well. We've been short a quality wrist spinner. I'd love us to now also test out these players, especially as we know that Aussie is sort of feeling, now pretty much a second string team for T20.
So Omer, for us as well, there's a Champions Trophy coming up in 4 months, but the next ODI or T20 World Cup is about 18 months away. So I feel like we can be more experimental here. And I really want to see one of the wrist spinners actually being in the 11. But Omer, again, how do you see the overall squad in the mix and what's your take on it?
Yeah, so I'm thinking very short term. You're right. I mean, we've got about 18 months, so we can be a little bit short term focus, near term focused, and kind of see what is the best 11. So I think there are a couple of openers in the squad in Hasibullah, who I don't think makes my 11. But Omer Yusuf, pretty good. He's opened as well. I think the ODI is more than the T20, so he can open as well. But for me, again, just thinking these 3 series, just getting a look at how these pitches were, I think having Riz Babar 2.0 might not be a bad idea for these 3 games, some stability to get going on the top. But then, yeah, a lot of exciting players. And, again, Usman Khan, hopefully, he shows up. But Sabzada, Irfan, I mean, these guys, I think they can turn into some big T20 players. Salman Agha, right? I mean, he had a really good PSL. So what does he now bring to the international?
By the way, before we announced the teams for this tour, on the show, I had said, you heard it here first, he's probably a future captain for Pakistan. I just feel like he's got that mindset. He's in every format. He's a fighter. I just like what he brings to the table. But Omer, you want to take a shot at the 11? What do you think a potential 11 could be?
Yeah, by the way, so Salman Agha is the vice captain, right?
Yeah, this is the first time for this tour they appointed him vice captain. That's correct.
Yeah. So my 11 would be Riz Babar at the top. Then you got Usman Khan, Saibzada Farhan, Irfan Khan, Salman Aga. So that is your six batters.
Is that in order?
With obviously, yeah, pretty much, yeah. Abbas Afridi, I think he's been decent in the games he's played, given again how the pitches have been. So I'll have a fast bowler heavy lineup. So Abbas Afridi, Shaheen Shah, Naseem Shah, Haris Rauf, and then again, I don't think I can keep a left arm wrist spinner out of my 11. Given I think they both deserve a chance, but I'd start with Sufyan and see how he goes.
Okay. Khurram, how would you do it differently?
That sounds actually a pretty decent start, what Omer just shared. My hope is that we actually give everybody a game. Really, this is an unique opportunity. We've just won the ODI series. We're going to be confident. Try out, really figure out the couple of players that have to play. So, for example, if you're going to play Hasibullah as a specialist batsman, I believe he's a keeper as well, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I don't think you drop Rizwan, which means Hasibullah is probably the only one who doesn't really get a game in. He's just become Rizwan has just become the T20I captain as well. So you play him. I think Babar has just turned a corner. You want to give him confidence. You play him as well. Batting order, I think.
And sorry, Babar is not in the Zimbabwe series. The next tour is Zimbabwe ODI T20. He's there. This is probably his only international experience before I think we play South Africa in a test series in a month's time.
Yeah. No, exactly. So give him a go. Let him, sort of build on the confidence he's built right now. And then in the bowling attack, I really feel like Haris Rauf has become that player that you play him every game, and then I would build the team around these guys, right? And make sure I want Jandar to get a game, for example. Abbas Afridi, I would play at least a couple of games.
Yeah, I would
right?
I would probably have the big three now, Naseem, Shaheen, Haris, and then with them one of Afridi, Abbas Afridi, and Jahadar, and then perhaps rotate the big three, right? So maybe they can play 2 games each, especially if we can win the first one, right? Because you feel like you want to see that. The other thing I would do differently from what Omer said, I probably would not open with both Babar and Rizwan. I'd probably have Rizwan open with perhaps Usman and then have Babar at 3. I think when we tried that briefly in Shaheen's captaincy, I thought Babar really was doing quite well in that role. So I feel like it just adds a bit more length to the batting lineup as well. But
yeah, and what I'd love to see is some flexibility in the batting order, right? Like it makes no sense for Rizwan and Babar to be out there together. That's just not how modern T20I works. So make sure that you have one of those 2 guys out there to provide that sort of foil for your hitters, and then play the game around them, right? Like, it's not rocket science. I really don't understand why we haven't sort of tested out these floating sort of batting orders.
But I often mention, right? Like if you're playing, like we play cricket in the gully or whatever, it's a very basic thing. Who we send in depends on who gets out, right? And T20 kind of brings that into play. Like you have to have an order. Who gets out defines who goes in. And that principle in T20 really makes sense, I think. But any predictions for the series, guys? Omer, you want to go first?
That's a tough one. I think it'll be close. It's three T20s, right? So I'd say 2-1 for Pakistan, just because I'm Pakistani, not because of and given the confidence they're taking in. Otherwise, I think it's going to be pretty evenly matched. I think Australia at home with their T20 bashers, is going to be a good fight.
Yeah, Khurram?
Yeah, I'll go for 2-1 Pakistan as well. Again, if you'd asked me 30 days ago, I said am I crazy? But just they're on a high right now. There's a lot of confidence. I think Gillespie is going to make a telling contribution from the coach's desk, and we're going to win this.
Yeah, sounds good. I was going to say 2-1 as well, so no argument there. Just, guys, a final question. The news has come out in the last couple of days that India has announced that they will not be coming to Pakistan for the Champions Trophy. Apparently, Pakistan is going to give them a bhari jawab, as they've been saying in the news, whatever that means. I guess it's not something which we can solve in the next 3 minutes. But Khurram, you want to go first? What do you? I mean, it's not a surprise, but what do you make of that? What do you think Pakistan should handle that?
It's pretty disappointing, I must say. I mean, look, Pakistan, when they were, when we were thinking about going to the World Cup or not, I think a lot of the conversation was what's going to happen, when the Champions Trophy comes along. And I think we did the right thing, and I was hoping India would also do the right thing. But I'm also not surprised, like you said, like the reality is India can get away with whatever they want in world cricket right now. They've sort of earned that, to be fair to them. They bring in the money. They bring in the star power too now, right? And so it's not surprising. I don't know how far we're going to get with the Bhari Jawab. I think what we have to do is we have to build up our cricket to the level where we are also a team without which a global tournament can't take place. But I suspect we'll eventually relent along the lines of excuse me, them playing their preliminary games in the UAE and insisting that if there's a semi-final, final, it'll be held in Pakistan. So that's I think what as bhari as we can potentially get.
I mean, my take on this was, you know what? I said, okay, fine. The last thing I wanted to see is what happened in the Asia Cup. So if the Champions Trophy is a 15-game tournament, if you are making it hybrid, only perhaps India 3 games and one semi-final, if they make it, should be in Dubai. Everything else should be here. If you are making it hybrid, I mean, that's what I wouldn't settle for anything less. And let me talk of how we will, if they don't come here, we will also say we will not go there in future. But that's a nice way for the board to say we won't do the hard stuff right now. That's for some other government and some other board to tackle perhaps 18 months from now. Omer, your take on the whole news?
Yeah, I think the hybrid scenario you mentioned is probably the only acceptable hybrid scenario. I think the big question is how much say does Pakistan have in it, right? If they have a way to continue in Pakistan and India backs out, I think yes. I mean, the thing is, long term, for global cricket's sake, for growth in Pakistan cricket's sake, somebody has to step up at some point. Otherwise, the monopoly will continue. And today it's Pakistan, tomorrow some other country might be, on the wrong side of this and be struggling as well. So I think the ICC and Pakistan needs to take a stand. And India, again, if Pakistan has been very accommodating in terms of, the same day game in Lahore, you come in the morning and you leave in the evening. I mean, can't get better than that from being accommodating. So that doesn't work. The hybrid scenario you mentioned is a good plan B. But outside of that, I think Pakistan should probably take a stand. And so should global cricket.
I think the only leverage in Pakistan's hand is, so again, we all work in business. We know that to get to a certain outcome, you need to pitch another outcome, right? So what you can pitch out there is we will not be going to forfeit the game against India, and that commercially is a massive hit. So you can perhaps use that as leverage, and I don't know. Let's see where we end up with this. We're not
I
going to.
mean, we've never called the bluff, right? I mean, we've never said, okay, we're not coming as well, because then all of a sudden, like you said, the outcome has totally changed. You're not making revenue with another option as well. So I think we need to at some point call that and see what happens. And
That I think you need a board that's very sure of itself, backed by a government very sure of itself, right? Because this is not a board level decision. This is a government level decision, perhaps. So unlikely, but let's see how. Let's hope it works out and we have a decent tournament, mostly in Pakistan. But good stuff, guys. Thank you for being on.
yeah, thanks,
Thank you,
Faris.
Faris. Always a pleasure.
And those of you watching, we'll be back perhaps after the first T20 on the weekend. In the meantime, stay tuned to the shiny side.